and welcome back to Duenkel Productions here on YouTube. You know what it is. You know the vibes. We got some good vibes today. You know it's Friday. Friday is always a great day. Start of the weekend, all that good stuff. You know, we got a lot of football this weekend. And I had to bring in someone that knows just as much about football, if not more, than I do. My buddy Mason Gress. Mason,
Good.
how are you, buddy?
I'm good. I'm excited to join your podcast then.
All right, man. Well, we appreciate you coming on and coming on the show with us. We really appreciate it. You know, you're a big fan of the show, so we had to get you on. But Mason, let me start with this, man. Big game this weekend. Obviously, you know, you got your Ravens hat on. Pittsburgh at Baltimore this weekend. One of the best rivalries in the NFL and one of the best in NFL history. One of the greatest rivalries ever. Who do you see winning? And let's get like a breakdown of the game from you. Like, what do you think? What do you think are strengths and weaknesses of both teams? Stuff like that.
I'm gonna start out strengths and weaknesses. I think it's honestly gonna come down to the offensive lines and the defensive lines. Baltimore's offensive line is honestly weaker than I'd like them to be, and Pittsburgh has a pretty good D line. And I don't know. I think then Pittsburgh. I think they have a lot of receivers, but I think Big Ben will get pressured more than he normally does and make things a little more complicated. So it'll come down to really how the offensive line and defensive lines for each team kind of handle the opposing side. And as a Ravens fan, I couldn't say Pittsburgh's gonna win. So either way, it's got to be Baltimore. I hope they win though.
What's the score? What do you think in score wise?
Honestly, I'm not very good at predicting scores, but probably somewhere in the 20s. I'd like to see Baltimore put up a lot of points, but this is actually Lamar's first game against Big Ben. So curious to see how that matchup goes.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with actually a lot of what you said. You know, it's really going to come down to the O line and D line on both sides of the ball. That's kind of how this rivalry goes. I mean, you look back through the history of Ravens Steelers, you have some great pass rushers, obviously, and I mean, you can obviously point to the defense as being a huge part of that rivalry. You know, with Ray Lewis, Ed Reed, Troy Polamalu,
Yeah.
James Harrison, just guys that come to my mind in this rivalry. But yeah, I think it's definitely going to be an interesting game. I actually have been saying kind of all week, like I've alluded to it on this show, that actually, you know, I think Pittsburgh's going to win pretty convincingly, and I honestly changed my tune a little bit. You know, I've been watching some sports stuff throughout the week. You know, obviously the game being in Baltimore kind of changes the dynamic of things. You know, if it was at Heinz Field right now, I think I'd have a little bit of a different opinion on this game. But I think, like you were saying, it's going to be in the 20s. I think Pittsburgh 27-24. I think just Pittsburgh overall, I think they're a little bit better than Baltimore. I think Baltimore, you know, they're not a bad team. I think they're definitely a Super Bowl contender by the end of the season. I just think that right now Pittsburgh's hitting their stride at the right time, coming off a big win against a very good football team in Tennessee last weekend. So I think it's going to be a really good game. I just think that I think Big Ben or the Steelers defense is just going to make a play or two late, and that's going to carry him to the W. But I think, you know, I could obviously see Baltimore winning. I think a big key in this actually is Mark Ingram not playing.
I
I
was gonna
think
say that.
I think that's going to be a little bit of a big deal. Like, I'm not saying, you know, obviously Baltimore has J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, who stepped in last year and played very well for them. So I don't think their running backs are going to be horrible, but I think Mark Ingram being out is going to kind of hinder them back a little bit from winning this game.
Yeah, I agree. He's a big part. So see how they handle it.
Now, Mason, let me ask you this. So the Ravens have been making moves. They've been active. What are your thoughts
Definitely.
on Yannick and Dez joining the squad? Do you think Dez is going to be a big addition, or is he just going to be kind of a smoke screen piece that they just added just because.
I think once he gets going, he could be a decent receiver, but they can't rely on expecting too much out of him. But I think the biggest thing a lot of people didn't really think about is he's going to do a lot for the young guys. Like, he is the mold of what Miles Boykin could be. I know James Prochet was they were actually talking during practice today. They have a picture on their Instagram page where they were like talking together, and I was like, that's awesome. And he's already been hanging out with Hollywood, and it's just like, I think he's honestly what I hope Willie Snead is too, but I think Dez is a better version of that. Like, he's more of a mentor if anything. Worst case scenario, he's gonna give some good thoughts and help people out.
Yeah, I think like you were saying, that veteran leadership's obviously important. You know, you look back on those early years in even Green Bay. You know, you look back 2009, 2010 when Rodgers took over that team. They had a lot of veteran leadership. You know, you talk about Charles Woodson, you talk about Donald Driver, you obviously talk about, you know, Nick Collins. You talk about all these guys that were veteran presence, and I think helped the development along with all these younger guys, because, you know, Rodgers and Nelson and all, you know, all these guys were not at, like, I don't think Rodgers was like at his prime in 2010. I don't know. I mean, I think he was right there, but I don't think he was really hitting his peak. I think 2011 he really started to become prime Aaron Rodgers. But I think, you know, like you were saying, it's always good to have veteran presence in the locker room. You know, especially, you know, Dez. I think Dez has some good football left in him. I really do. I think if they signed him maybe a week ago, I could see him maybe playing this weekend. Because I think the Ravens truly believe he's a difference maker. Because, I mean, when you talk to people around the league, obviously, you know, a lot of people are rooting for Dez to come back. You know,
Yes.
Obviously Dez is a very entertaining player. You know, he was a really good receiver on the Cowboys with Roma, obviously, in the early years of Dak, and then, you know, just ended up not working out in Dallas, which Dallas is in a bad situation right now, you know, with Jerry Jones and Mike McCarthy and all that going on. But yeah, it's really going to be interesting. But what are your thoughts on Yannick Ngakoue, and also the Ronnie Stanley signing? What were your thoughts on both?
Here, I got some other points quick to bring up on that other topic.
Okay.
Not to drag on that, but I think too with Dez, I want to add, like, the whole mentorship. The Ravens have 4 receivers who have less than 2 years of experience. So if anything, he's gonna bring that knowledge that they may not really have. There's some things they'll learn from that. So, like we kind of talked about, I believe he's gonna be maybe not a true difference maker, but he'll be another receiver that Lamar can trust.
Right.
But at worst case scenario, he gives them the mentorship, and he's gonna allow those guys to be smarter. Yes, like I've seen on Instagram, I really wish they would have brought him in like August and done this, so he would have had more time to work with them. Maybe they feel he's ready. I honestly wouldn't even be surprised if they bring him up this weekend already off the practice squad. I wouldn't be surprised, because they cut Marcus Gilchrist from the practice squad, who they had been bringing up for the past 2 weeks. So I wouldn't be surprised if they consider bringing Dez in right away even. He may not do a lot, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's on the field.
Yeah, that'd be huge. You know, definitely a guy that can make a difference. You know, you talk about, obviously, you know, me and you have talked extensively about that. You know, Baltimore, they're kind of a receiver away from really being a very elite offense. And I think, you know,
they need a third option.
Yeah, I mean, Dez could fill that void. I don't know if he's gonna get back to where he was like in his Dallas days, but if he gets somewhere close to that, like, he's gonna be a huge difference maker for you guys.
And what you're alluding to then with Ngakoue, I think honestly he's the pass rusher they've needed for years. Since Suggs has really hit his decline, they needed someone. They let Smith go in free agency. They let McPhee go in free agency years before that. They needed a pass rusher as Suggs started to decline. I think that'll also make Judon a better player. And I honestly, truthfully hope with the Stanley signing, maybe they get Gakwe signed and maybe Judon takes his number down a little bit because he sees that he can be more productive here with Gakwe being on the other side. And that creates a duo where they aren't so money hungry where they would be on another team because they're on a losing team. They take a little bit of a pay cut to be competitive.
Yeah.
I mean, it's wishful thinking, but it's possible.
Yeah, I think definitely, Mason, like you were saying, obviously Yannick is a talented player.
Yes.
I don't think he was really a good fit in Minnesota for what they do. I think
He didn't really get
obviously,
going yet in Minnesota, I don't think.
yeah, well, and obviously them not having Daniil Hunter didn't help because,
Yes, that's true.
obviously the Ravens have, Calais and Judon that can also apply pressure. So that way the offensive line just can't key in on Yannick and double team him. They have to focus on, Yannick and Calais and Judon, and they have to focus on all these guys. So it's really interesting. I like the move. Like I was
It didn't
saying,
cost a lot.
no,
Really.
definitely not. I think there's about 4 teams in the AFC that I think could make the Super Bowl. Obviously, I think right now I think you could agree with me on this. The Chiefs are the clear-cut number 1.
Yeah.
Right now, and then I would throw probably Pittsburgh, Baltimore, and I know you don't like Tennessee, but I would throw them in there just as kind of a team that can compete. I think Tannehill's playing at a pretty good level right now. And obviously Derrick Henry, the stiff arm god. But what were your thoughts on Ronnie Stanley getting a long-term deal today?
I'm really glad about that. I thought they'd have to use the franchise tag and wouldn't re-sign him right away. And that would put a hindrance on getting Gakwe back or Judon, possibly taking and trading him if they can't re-sign him. Now they have options to they have almost a full deck of cards to decide now of what they're going to do. Like, it's not like they have to use the tag on Stanley now. Like, that gives them an extra option, and it really helps in the offseason.
Right, yeah.
Because they can't re-sign Gakwe until the offseason, being he's a franchise tag player. Same with Judon.
Right. Well, and yeah, especially like you were talking, like we've been talking, obviously, salary cap. We don't know how much it's going to go up this year because of like all the fans not being able to attend, like the NFL not being able to have full capacity. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens with the salary cap, this year and years on, which could kind of affect some teams and what they're able to do. But yeah, I mean, like you were saying, Stanley, it's a great signing. He's a very good tackle. I think he's a top tier tackle in this league. I'd probably put him second behind Bakhtiari for left tackle. I think him and Bakhtiari are really the two best in the league. I think obviously too, they got him on team friendly deals. I mean, obviously, like you sent me earlier, they got Marlon for under Jalen Ramsey, and they got Stanley for under Laramie Tunsil. So that's kind of a big deal for you guys, especially considering, like you were alluding to, you guys want to re-sign Yannick and a Judon.
I don't think they'll re-sign Judon. It's just wishful thinking that they may. He's going to have to come down on his price. Because if they take him next year, it's almost $20 million, and they aren't going to have the money to pay for that.
Right, yeah, for
They're
sure.
going to have to literally trade him right away if they do tag him.
Right, well, and they obviously are going to have to re-sign Lamar at some point here too.
Yeah.
So that's another big one.
And Mark Andrews is coming up too.
Yep, Mark Andrews, he's really good. I've been really impressed with him. He's a good, bright young player in the league. So, Mason, let's shift to this now. What do you see happening before Tuesday's trade deadline? Do you see Will Fuller going to the Packers? Do you not? Like, what other moves are you kind of looking for?
I honestly think a lot of receivers still could be moved. And pass rushers. I think that's the thing teams are really looking for. I don't know if Fuller's going to get moved. I think, honestly, they're going to look for Kenny Stills before Fuller or Cooks. Because Kenny Stills is getting paid $7 million, and he's their fourth option. So I think if anyone's out the door, it's Kenny Stills.
Yeah,
But the Texans are also at that point where they're kind of almost in fire sale mode, so anyone could go.
right. Yeah, and they just came out with something, I believe, that Deshaun Watson, J.J. Watt, Laramie Tunsil, and another player, I believe. Those are the only 4 players that are untouchable.
Yeah, their rookie first-round pick.
Yeah, their
Howard.
rookie first-round pick, Howard. So, I mean, obviously, it sounds like to me from that statement that they're looking to deal a lot of the players. So I could see a lot of guys being moved, like you were kind of saying. I could see Green Bay trading for Fuller without question. I think a guy to look for is Gilmore. I think that's a really
It's a
interesting name.
name to keep an eye on. I just feel like it probably won't happen, but it's also interesting. If the Patriots don't deem themselves contenders, they're not going to pay him that money.
Well, and I mean, you talk about like if the Titans add him, if Green Bay adds him, if Baltimore adds him, like there's so many teams like that are like, you know, in that title, the Super Bowl contention, where if they add them, that could just, you know, bring them right to the top.
Sure.
Like we were talking about earlier. But I think, you know, obviously Gilmore, I think he's the best defensive player in the game. A lot of people tell me it's Aaron Donald, but I would without question take Stephon Gilmore over any defensive player in the league today. He would probably be like my 5th pick overall. I'd probably take about 4 quarterbacks before him. That's about it.
Pretty high praise. I like the guy, but I don't think I'd say best defensive player.
Aaron Donald for you, or
I'd say Donald or Mack. You want a pass rusher. I'd actually almost put Jamal Adams up there. I'm a huge fan of him. He's such a difference maker.
yeah, man. I mean, you talk
Or
about
Derwin when healthy.
yeah. I mean, like you're saying, Derwin when healthy. I was just about to say that. Like, what are your thoughts? Like, can you believe how many injuries we've had to such great players this year? I mean, Saquon,
It's
CMC,
awful.
Mostert. I mean, you talk about Nick Bosa, Solomon Thomas, you know, and there's so many others. I mean, Dak. Like you just talk about all these guys. It's been such a rough year.
Yeah, it's honestly pretty awful. I don't know if it's the offseason how everything was slowed or if it's just how it is because I feel like the NFL over time does just really have a lot more injuries. I mean, players know what they're getting into for the most part, so it's just something they have to deal with.
Right. I mean, but it's so weird to me because I was like thinking back the other day and I'm like, okay, what's another year where we can point to that like a lot of good players were hurt and there's not a definitive year like
Well,
really.
you think I remember like 2 years ago they had a list of all the players that tore their ACLs, and
Yeah.
it was close to 20 or 30 players
Yeah.
in 1 year.
It's crazy.
And I'm not saying all of them were big names, but it's a decent amount of names on the list. Some players were never the same again, like Ryan Clady.
Yeah.
He really never played after that.
Well, I
I
mean,
think the
yeah.
thing that I always have I feels for is when you have players that injure themselves time and time again. I mean, like Tavon Young's been injured for the year 3 different times in his career, and stuff like that's just like you feel bad for him because you're like, once is enough. Like you're injured like 3 or 4 times in your career, your career's basically over.
Well, and I mean, also, Mason, I was just about to say this. Shout out to Jason Barrett. I mean, this man has battled like you were
Yeah,
saying, 2 or 3 season-ending injuries, and he's playing some of his best football right now in San Francisco. Like that is it's great to see those kind of stories because, like you were
definitely.
alluding to, it doesn't really happen often. You know, like we've obviously been saying throughout the show.
But definitely, yeah. When you see stories like that, it's really nice.
Yeah,
Or
definitely.
even like RG3 kind of working his way back. I honestly think he may get a chance to be a starter at some point soon again.
Yeah, where do you think where could you see him end up?
I mean, we've talked back and forth about this. It's hard to say because it's all about a lot of teams want to go with younger guys versus an older guy who's, in his case, hasn't really started in a while. No one knows how he's going to be.
Right.
he's had maybe, I think he's honestly only had like one start in his last 2 years. It was week 17 of last year, which wasn't really that pretty.
No.
Like, I think he gets a chance to start, but it's kind of like a Tyrod Taylor type deal. He's not going to be a high-end starter. It's going to be a starter until someone else takes over, probably at this point.
What are your thoughts on Justin Herbert?
I honestly like him a lot better now than I thought I would coming out. I didn't hate him coming out. I just really didn't think too highly of him. I was like, okay, it's another quarterback. Who knows what happens?
Right.
But to be fair, there's not a lot of quarterbacks that I'm like super high on coming out. I think bringing my scouting perspective in, I think quarterbacks are so hard to put an eye on how they're going to be because there's so much extra stuff that no other position has to deal with because they're the face of the team. Like you have so much pressure. And that's why it's hard to be like, this quarterback is going to be great in the pros because someone could look amazing and fall on their face because of the pressure.
Yeah.
That's why it's really hard to hype up a quarterback, in my opinion.
I mean, like you were saying, I mean, Herbert has really surprised me, you know. I've been saying it. I was saying it all last year. I'm like, Tua's going to be the next guy, and I really think, you know, Herbert's shown that he's probably going to be that next guy. I mean, you look at those three quarterbacks. I mean, you obviously look at Burrow and Herbert. You know, they've played so far this year, and I think both, in my estimation, have looked pretty good. I'm honestly kind of impressed with Burrow. I think he's working out better in Cincinnati than a lot of people anticipated.
Definitely.
I think Cincinnati Mason is honestly probably an offensive line away from being a pretty good offense.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. They have a lot of options at the receiver and running back position.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about Mixon, Bernard. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, obviously AJ Green, T. Higgins.
I think AJ's gone after this year, but I definitely agree. Like for now, he's been helpful.
Yeah,
Somewhat.
it's hard to say with AJ because like last year we all thought he was gone, and then he ended up re-signing back. So it's
they franchised him though, so you can't really be too mad. He can't really do a whole lot.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. Honestly, man, that's a good point. I didn't even think of that. I thought they just signed him to like a 1-year deal. But no, dude, like you were saying, you know, it's really hard to get a read on quarterbacks. Like it's really hard to get a read. And that's always my argument with quarterbacks too, Mason, is that, you know, they got to go to a right fit. I mean, like you talk about like this year with Herbert, I think the Chargers were a really good fit. I think they need a couple more pieces. I also think, you know, them being in the division with Kansas City and even the Raiders who have impressed me this year is, you know, obviously it's a little bit more difficult because they're in the division with maybe the best team in the league right now. So it's really hard to, you know, say that they're going to be like a for sure playoff team, you know, in the next couple of years. But I think they're trending that way. I mean, I think Herbert's definitely the real deal. I'm looking forward to watching Tua on Sunday, though. I'm really looking forward to watching Tua because I was always high on Tua, like coming out of Alabama. I think he's going to be really good, but it'll be really interesting to watch him because if he lives up to what Burrow and Herbert are doing, we might have some really good quarterbacks in the future. I mean, obviously, you're talking about guys that have already been starters. You know, Kyler Murray, Russell Wilson. You know, he's still in his prime. I mean, Carson Wentz. We'll see what happens with Dak coming off this injury, but I think Dak's a warrior. He's gonna fight and he's gonna come back and he's gonna be that same guy. I'm really high on Dak. I hope he gets his money, man. I hope he does because he's earned it.
I think another thing too when you bring up quarterbacks is going into like the off season. I always like looking at how people handle things because you look at like every team's in a different stage and every quarterback's in a different stage for the most part. Some teams want to go really young, some teams want a gap starter, and some teams want the veteran. Like I honestly think it's possible Matt Ryan's a hot commodity this offseason for a team.
You want to know where I think he could go?
Yeah, I'm curious.
Cleveland.
I don't know if they're ready to give up on Baker yet.
Dude, I don't know, man. I've watched the Browns play, Mason. What I read out of Baker, this is what I see on him, okay? So he'll look for the first read, and then he'll dance a little bit, look at the second read, and then he'll start really dancing. Like he'll just start dancing or trying to make a play. And I think, obviously the Browns are 5-2. They're what, third in the division, right? Third?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're third in the division in the in the very competitive AFC North with Pittsburgh and Baltimore. I mean, I just don't know if Baker's that guy. I mean, I said this on episode 4 with Zach. I said I don't know if Baker's the guy. Like, I just for me, I don't see that it factor like I do see Kyler Murray, Russell Wilson, Dak, even Carson Wentz. I see a little bit of it factor in him. I know he's had issues turning the ball over this year. That's part injuries and part on him, obviously. But I think, you obviously look at, Lamar, Patrick Mahomes, Deshaun Watson, all these guys that, keep developing. They all had that kind of it factor. And I'm not sure I see that in Baker, but Matt Ryan to the Browns, I think it could happen. What
I
do you
think one more thing on that too. I think the Browns, what they do,
Okay.
one, I kind of think their coaching is messed up, honestly. But I think what they do over time is they mistake. It's not even so much their coaching; it's more management as a whole. They're too rushing stuff when they're a team that's not had much success. Like, I don't want to jinx the guy in any way, but I wouldn't be surprised if they try and let go of their coach within a year or two if he doesn't win like a ton more games just because they rush things too much. But also, I think I almost want to say and I'm just thinking this now, but I almost want to say they try to find the it factor in players who are almost too cocky, and they think that's the combination with the it factor. And that's almost a bad thing because they're too confident and they're not as good of a player. Because you look at like Johnny Manziel and Baker are both kind of those players.
Right, and
They're almost too
there's some
cocky
of that
and
no doubt too.
yeah. Well, I mean, Odell's honestly a good receiver though. I think he has a bit of a right to be kind of cocky, but those other guys are kind of young in the league still, and they really haven't done a lot, but they have that personality where they're just the best, and it's like, what have you actually done? And I think the Browns see that and they think, oh, that's the it factor, but it's like, no, that's just cockiness. And I think maybe the last couple of years they've been trying to get a really bright shining star per se, and they're just drafting people that are just self-confident, but when they start to lack talent, that confidence goes away. And I think that's one thing to look at for quarterbacks too. Like, you have to look at them being confident and being good at what they do, but they need the humbleness too. And I think Cleveland's drafting players that don't have the humbleness.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
I mean, you look at a lot of players they bring in too, like even Jabril Peppers. Like, he did a lot on offense. He did stuff on defense. He was hyped up to be who he was. We bring him to Cleveland, and it's like he didn't really do anything because it's a different atmosphere.
And Jabril's finding some success with the Giants too.
Yeah,
I
and
don't think he's
because
played
he's on a
bad this
different
year.
team that's different.
Right.
I'm not saying the Giants are gold, but
They're
they
better.
have pieces.
Yeah, and they're more well run. I think. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
you look at the Giants. Obviously, like, I think everybody was kind of sleeping on Daniel Jones. Now, when they drafted him, I was like, really, Daniel Jones? Like, but I mean, Daniel
Yeah,
Jones
I
has
wasn't
played
sure.
well. He's played all right for them. I mean, it'll be really interesting to see next year. After they make some more additions, obviously, and they get Saquon Barkley back. It'll
Yeah.
be really interesting to see what that team is, especially considering, I mean, if you look at their division, I mean, 7-9, 8-8, 9-7 could be
Yeah, you could win that division.
right. Yeah, I mean, I think Philadelphia is gonna have to kind of tear some down and kind of rebuild. I
I wouldn't
think
be
that
surprised if they trade Wentz.
really
I mean, they have Jalen Hurts.
you
Like,
like Hurts?
I don't personally like him, but like friends of mine will talk about him and say how good he is, and I've seen how he came in and became a difference maker against the Ravens in that game. Like, if he wouldn't have been on that team, the Eagles wouldn't have done anything in that game. Like, he is the spark plug that got them to almost win that game. So he kind of has that it factor, a lot like Lamar, in my opinion. I've never really saw it until when I seen him play the Eagles, but I do like that about him.
Yeah, I mean, I love Jalen Hurts. He's a winner. He's a good leader. He, like you were saying, he's got that it factor. I'm surprised at your Wentz take though, trading Wentz. But where do you
Well,
think?
that's the
So
thing
if the
too.
Eagles were to trade Wentz, where do you think's the best fit for him?
Honestly, it's got to be a team that has an offensive line and receivers. Honestly, wouldn't be surprised of the rumors people talking about Indianapolis. Like, that would be really nice. You have talent. You have one of the best offensive lines in football, and I'm a huge fan of Wentz. So just to make sure no one thinks that I'm criticizing Wentz by saying Hurts is the guy, I like Wentz. He's one of my favorite quarterbacks in the league ever since he came into the league. Honestly, I was a big fan of him. Thought he was good, and I still think he's good. I just think he needs more talent around him. When you have one starting offensive lineman from a season ago and you play the Ravens, I expect you to be hit often, which he did. He was hit like 15 times.
Right, and I mean too.
And I expect that when you have no offensive line.
Right, and you talk about like obviously Zach Ertz being out. You talk about Miles Sanders being out. You talk about Alshon Jeffrey, Deshaun Jackson. You talk about those
You don't
four
have
guys plus the
people.
offensive line. Like you can't expect Wentz to. I'll give Wentz credit. Last year he really impressed me because I didn't think the Eagles had a shot to beat Dallas in that game, and Wentz made more throws than Dak did down the stretch, and that's what really led him to win the division. But no, I think your Indianapolis point is a really good one. I think that'd be a great fit if they did look to trade him. And I do like Jalen Hurts. I like you were saying. I think Jalen could be a guy in the NFL that could start at some point. I don't know. I think Philly could be a good fit. I think for Jalen, and then obviously if you move off Carson and if he's on the Colts, that could be a good fit. Um, and obviously there's going to be a lot of movement going on because I think if the Jets get the number one pick, I think Darnold's going to move. I think if the Cowboys somehow get it, if the Patriots somehow get it, like you're gonna have so many teams making.
I think it's going to be a lot of shuffling of quarterbacks this offseason.
Yeah, I think so too. I
And
think
maybe even some before the offseason being at the deadline.
Yeah, I mean,
I doubt it, but it's possible.
Yeah, I mean the deadline's Tuesday. I'd be shocked if a big name quarterback got moved.
Yeah.
I would be shocked, but I'm telling you, man, if all these quarterbacks move, it's going to really change the landscape of the NFL again. But Mason, I also wanted to ask you. So a lot of people are saying that Tampa Bay is kind of like a 1 year and then done kind of deal because of how many guys they have on 1-year deals. Do you think that's the case?
I think it really depends on Brady. You got to look at Brady. If Brady decides he's done after this year, yeah, it's a 1-year team. If Brady comes back, they find a way to rework deals and make sure they get as many people back as possible. I think a lot of players probably signed 1-year deals based off that. I wouldn't be surprised because they know Brady's old and he could retire if he wants.
Right. Yeah.
Like, I still think honestly Brady should have went to Indianapolis. I've said that since March.
Yeah. I
If
mean,
I were Brady, I would have gone to Indianapolis.
I think if he would have went to India, I think he would have maybe had a couple more years. Because of how good that offensive line and defense was, and not to mention the organization there. Jim Mercy.
Jim Irsay ain't like the greatest owner, but at least he knows how to make moves. You just can't stay out of trouble.
He's better than Jerry Jones, my friend.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
I would disagree there.
I mean, it's crazy. Obviously, the Colts. I think the Colts, like you've been saying, the Colts and Titans are two really interesting teams. But Mason, I wanted to ask your opinion. So, you have been hating on the Texans all year. So now
Titans.
Titans. Sorry, Titans.
Oh, I like the
Thank you.
Texans.
Okay, Mason. So you've been hating on the Titans all year. So first, I want you to tell me why they're not for real. Why you think they're not for real. And then I want you to say just one good thing about the Titans.
I told you the good thing. Derrick Henry's a good football player.
Okay. So why are they not for real then, Mason?
I honestly just don't trust Tannehill.
Ah,
I don't think he's a good quarterback. I think he's in a better system than he was in Miami, but I honestly just don't think he's reliable. If he gets in a system where he's got to outduel another quarterback, I don't think he'll be able to do it. And I know people can bring up he did against the Texans, but I think a lot of that comes down to Derrick Henry. If Derrick Henry gets injured, that team will be down to like nothing. Like they really don't have, aside from AJ Brown, they really don't have much more on offense. And that's the reason I always rip on them, because I'm just like, you don't have that good of a defense. It's not bad, but it's not great. And offensively, it's really just Derrick Henry.
yeah, I mean,
That's honestly the reason I rip on him. I used to kind of be a Dolphins fan, so when Tannehill got drafted, I was like, oh, okay, well, this guy could be good. And then he wasn't really anything. Yes, he's better with the Titans, but I don't think he's a good quarterback in the league.
you know what the common thing is from that Dolphin football team that I think was a problem?
But
Adam Gase.
well, that was even before Gase was there, though, was a problem. Joe Philbin.
Philbin wasn't horrible. I mean,
To be completely honest, though, like I've told you before, and we've kind of alluded to it already, most teams are honestly based on their ownership groups.
oh yeah,
The
without
bad
question.
teams will stay bad because the ownerships groups don't know how to keep their nose out of stuff. They want to be a part of everything when they don't know anything about that aspect, like Jerry Jones.
Yep.
And you got guys like Dan Schneider who just think it's all about money and they don't care about helping their team out.
Yep.
Stephen Ross will just blow money on whoever, and that may not be good, may be bad. I just think that's really what it comes down to football. That's why the good teams stay good, because they know how to do things. Like the Ravens have had a good organization, and as have the Packers as a whole.
Yeah, I think there's about 8 teams you can really look towards that have had really well-run organizations. I would say probably let me know if you agree with me or not, but Green Bay, Baltimore, Pittsburgh, New England, Kansas City.
Kansas City's more on the rise, but I mean, overall they've done pretty decent stuff there. I think that's more of a newer one per se, with Mahomes kind of coming in and making that change almost.
Well, yeah, I'll throw Kansas City because of Mahomes. You know how I feel about my boy Mahomes, boy.
I'm just saying, before Mahomes, I don't think they really had a lot going for them. It's almost, in a roundabout way, they've almost come into the picture just because of drafting Mahomes. Because outside of Mahomes, they really never had too much. I'd actually almost put the success on Andy Reid when he came in.
Really?
Because he came in and he automatically turned the team around into a decent team.
Yeah, that's fair. Andy Reid's a good coach.
Yeah,
Okay, so Chiefs 5, and then I would say San Fran.
I think San Fran, outside of their little fiasco with Harbaugh, have always been a good run organization.
Yeah,
Outside
and
of
I think
Harbaugh
some years
thing,
with Harbaugh was good too, though. Like,
well, it's not so much that, it's just how the owner handled the general manager and the coach fighting.
right? Yeah.
Like that was their big like asterisk per se about how that was their one bad moment, I guess. Outside of that, they've been successful, honestly, their whole existence pretty much, except for some early, some downtime. But you know what I mean by?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
gotta
I
look
hear
at the
you.
Montana, the Young. They've always had a relatively successful run team.
And then number 7, Seattle.
Yeah.
And then.
But Seattle's even more modern too. I think the whole 2012 when they started to draft better and stuff. Before that, they were kind of slow too.
Dude, don't
I mean,
forget the Beastquake, bro. Don't forget the Beastquake, bro.
well, I know. I'm saying, like, honestly, like, towards the end of like the Matt Hasselbeck era is when they really started to like run the team good, because they had their weak points too. I just think there's some teams that don't really see a lot of hiccups. Like you look at New England, when Kraft took over, they were successful and they really have been since.
Right.
You look at, I mean, I'm a Ravens fan, but still, the whole time they've been in Baltimore, they've been relatively successful. Yes, the early years they were still building the team, but it's not like they were awful. And Green Bay, for the most part, really hasn't had that many down years either.
And then number 8, I would say Indianapolis. Number 8.
Yeah, I honestly think aside from Jim Irsay's off the field stuff, he's a good owner. I'm just saying, like, for him, I feel like that puts like a negative impact on the organization because
Yeah.
players may look about how their owner can get by with stuff. So they're like, oh, well, maybe I can get by with doing stuff too. But aside from that, I think he knows how to like manage stuff, not stick his nose in too much. I just think for the most part, I agree with your list, but I think it's pretty simple for the most part. It's like certain teams, the owner knows that they know what they know, and they don't try to overstep that.
Yeah. So
And
the
other
A1,
teams, they want to get involved, and they screw things up because they
right.
want to get too involved.
Right.
Which is
Yeah.
why I don't think the Cowboys are going to be. I think the Cowboys, like Jerry, needs to sell the team to someone else
That ain't happening.
because I just don't think he knows how to keep out of it.
Yeah. No. He can. I think that. So that's a correlation too. But I wanna run through this real quick for the audience. So the 8 teams were Packers, Ravens, Steelers, New England, Kansas City, San Fran, Seattle, Indianapolis. Those are the 8 best well-run organizations.
I would, in my opinion, I
in the
put
league.
Seattle and Indianapolis above Kansas City.
Okay, so Baltimore, Green Bay, Pittsburgh, New England, Seattle, Indianapolis, Kansas City, San Francisco.
Basically right around. I mean, overall, the top 10 you can't really go too wrong. It's only like there's certain teams that like your top 5. Like I like the top 5 for the most part. Like
Yeah,
I look at teams that have had history.
Yeah.
And you get good reputations. Like one thing I love about being a Ravens fan too is when these players leave, they still want to advertise for that team.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, like when Calais came in, he talked to Tony Jefferson.
Yeah.
And you look at him, Tony Jefferson's always trying to, even the Jamal Adams trade talk. Tony Jefferson was talking to Jamal Adams about going to the team. Like you look at, they want to promote stuff. That's one thing about Earl Thomas that became like obvious that he wasn't right for the team. He didn't care to get involved in that stuff. He's just like, I'm the best. It doesn't matter. And I think that's why people knew he was not right for the team. You need players that want to advertise and they want to talk about their good experiences.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
you need that.
Yeah. I mean, without question. I think obviously, I think the top 3, in my opinion, are Pittsburgh, Baltimore, Green Bay, and I think you could switch those any way you want.
Yeah, honestly.
I think the thing for me is these teams know how to get quarterbacks. Like you look at Pittsburgh, you know, they got Big Ben. They've had him for so long.
I wouldn't say quarterbacks because I'm not going to say the Ravens. I don't think have been that successful there.
Dude,
I just think they know. I'm not saying Flacco's bad, but I'm just saying like I think it's more than just the quarterback. It's the idea that they know how to get. They know how to handle situations.
Okay.
Like I mean, my 2 examples that I go to is when the Ravens had to cut Eric Weddle and Tony Jefferson.
Okay.
Eric Weddle said, "You guys need me to come back and coach, or want me to come back and play at some point." He'd consider it.
Right.
Even after getting cut, he's okay with that. Or Jefferson, he's still recruiting players to the Ravens after he got cut.
Right. Yeah.
Like that says a lot. He's always on their page commenting on stuff and talking to players and stuff.
Oh yeah, without question.
Like that shows that you have a good run organization when you can still ask someone to basically leave and they're like, no, it's okay. I'll still come back if you need me.
Right, yeah.
Like, that's almost like being friend zoned in a way. Like you're like, no, it's okay. It's okay. You can come back though. Like I don't know. Like I really I like that about it. Like I wouldn't be surprised. I've heard rumors that Tony Jefferson's gonna go to the Colts. If he don't go to the Colts, I wouldn't be surprised if the Ravens consider bringing him back.
Back to Baltimore, man. Back to Baltimore. Back in the friend zone.
The little asterisk on that is he's actually getting paid a little over $1 million because he filed an injury settlement. they'd almost be better off just bringing him back and paying him to play for him instead of paying him not to play.
That's fair.
Because they could probably get him on a mid deal and come in as a reserve safety.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
if nothing else, he's like the best recruiter they've ever had.
Facts. And like we were talking about, veteran leadership. Jefferson's a veteran, brings in good leadership.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing I was going to get back at you earlier, actually. That's one thing about the Ravens team, and I hate that, I'm not trying to make this all about the Ravens, but I love how they have veteran guys.
Yeah.
Like you got Ingram, you got Calais, you got I don't know, like outside of those two, there's more, but even Anthony Levine, a lot of people don't really know about him, but he's a really good veteran leader.
Marcus Peters.
Yeah, I'd even put him up there. I think he's a little bit more of the shy, quiet type. Like he's not going to say a lot, but I'm sure he talks and helps people.
Yes, sir.
But honestly, the Ravens, a lot of their core positions are young players.
Yeah.
Like Chuck Clark's second year at strong safety. Not Tony Jefferson. Sean Elliott's like second year. This is like his first true year in the league.
Right.
I mean, even like Marlon's still really young.
Mm-hmm.
You look at Queen, he's a rookie. Their pass rushers are still on their first contract. Almost all of them besides McPhee. McPhee's the other veteran I was going to bring up before. People forget about him being a pass rusher, but this has probably been – he's honestly probably the best pass rusher outside of Gakwe on the team. Like, he's truly done a lot this year.
I want to give a quick shout-out to the Baltimore Ravens for letting us get Big Z, man. Big Z Zadarius.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Or
I wish they would have never given him up.
You call him Zadalius.
Yeah. But honestly, they should have kept him and let Judon walk.
Oh, man, thank you. We appreciate it.
Don't get me wrong. The thing about Judon, too, as much as a lot of people rip on him, and I even do a little bit, he drops into coverage so much, and he does a lot of other stuff.
That's fair.
I think the problem, too, and I was reading a tweet about this the other day, actually. The problem with Judon is he wants to be paid like a pass rusher when he's not really a pass rusher.
That's fair.
If he was getting paid like Chuck Clark money, maybe $5 million a year, people would like him and say he's underrated. But since he wants to get paid 16 to 20, he's getting a lot of grief for it.
Right. Do you think he's more of a hybrid then?
Yes.
Kind of
I think he can rush the passer, and I think he'll look better now with Gakwe there. But he's not a true pass rusher, and he should not be paid like one.
Right, yeah.
He's not worth more than $10 million. That's like the max.
Completely agree with that. Mason, man, can't thank you enough for coming on the show. Literally, we had some good conversations on football, man. It was really good to get kind of your perspective on some of this stuff because, obviously me and you talk football. I mean, we talk football off the air just as much as we do on the air. So it's good to
more,
have.
But we got to try and make this more often where I try and do this more because I do enjoy this. It was fun.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate it. I will say this, Mason, it's going to be an interesting weekend in the NFL. We got a lot of good games.
Definitely.
Obviously highlighted by the game at 12. That's going to be
games at 12.
Yeah, games at 12. Hashtag go Pack go. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Mason knows the vibes. But yeah, Mason, thank you so much, man, for coming on the show. But thank you everyone for watching. We really appreciate it. Mason and I both thank y'all for watching. Hope y'all have a great day and enjoy your football Sunday because this is when this video will probably go up. Thank y'all for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. Have a great night, everybody. Peace out.